Better?
Yeah, so how's things going with you, Elisabeth?
Very well. It's been, well, it's a month already. It seems crazy.
Yeah,
But
I finally got
really,
given my plaque in the mail from the my songwriting competition yesterday, which is pretty darn cool.
oh,
It's
congratulations.
from 2020, from the first single, Death and Life, got entered.
Oh, well done.
No, it was really good. Very happy for that.
Oh, fantastic. Yeah. Oh, it's nice when you, it's nice when you get recognized, isn't it?
Mm. And next award I'm aiming for is the YouTube Creator Award one day. That'll be really cool to have. And so, I just made another music video called Hero. That's already up on YouTube as well. And slowly moving to Webtalk now with social media stuff. Not much traffic's coming on the Instagram and Facebook and the Twitter. How are you finding it?
I think because it's overwhelming, there's just so much information um, that it's almost impossible to even even if you say, right, I'm going to spend half an hour and really focus in on um, getting a marketing plan or a strategy
Mm.
going. It's so hard. There's just so much information. I think the best thing is for me, it's going through email and talking to people who know people,
Mm.
kind of the old-fashioned way. But what is interesting is there's a really cool thing. It's a group called Buy Me a Coffee, and I'm part of it. And so far, it's been really nice because the idea is the the company itself supports the people in its kind of club, and it runs little promotional things. Like, for instance, last week they ran a promotional thing asking anybody who wanted to do a short video about their positive experience with the company,
Mm.
and the most popular video will win €1,000, which is quite a lot for anybody. And but even if you just entered, they would pay you some money just to enter, which is the opposite to normally you have to pay to enter.
Mm.
And so that was really nice to receive that kind of, okay, I've done my little promotion for them and they paid me. And it was very direct, but it was also, they asked it to be done without any barriers or any parameters. You just do whatever you want. So I just did a tiny little trailer about my art. So I'm promoting myself, but I'm also promoting them. Got some money, and those little things can be little by little. They help. But also, I find that because most things are online now, performances are online. Even I find it like I'm determined to go and view something or participate in something, and it takes a lot of effort just to click and participate.
Mm.
It's because yes, it's convenient. It's in your home or in your office or wherever you're in your den or at your beach or wherever.
Mm. Mm.
But it's the mental preparation that you still need to do to engage in something in a meaningful way. So it still means that you have to focus and get your words together, get your ideas organized, have yourself emotionally in a stable place where you can be and know that you're going to do this without interruption. Um, and then what is your level of professionalism and how much do you want to bring to it? And all these questions that you normally do when you go to a meeting, face to face meeting, or you go to an exhibition, or even when you go to a concert, let alone if you're performing in it or composing, a composing participant of it. All these things have to be done as well. On top of that, though, there's a flood of more events because it's so easy to make an event. So somebody says, "I'm going to, you know, clean my instrument," and here's an event for you can watch it. And then so there's also the pressure to for anything to become an event,
Mm.
So that's where the saturation is starting to become almost impossible to navigate.
Yeah, I suppose marketing the old-fashioned way, word of mouth, is going to work better in the long term, because that's how I do it. You know, because Facebook advertising is too expensive. You're not
Yeah, and it
guaranteed a
doesn't actually
return.
attach to meaningful responses.
No.
And they can be robots even, so
that's where you got to be careful of too. Fake accounts out there.
Mm.
But nah, other than that, you know, I don't know. Things are like Facebook's just so overwhelmed, and Twitter and all that. That's why.
Then, having said that, we've got the group that I run, the Monday night improv sessions. And we just record our little sessions, and then somebody mixes them and makes them look presentable. They're all up on YouTube, or a lot of them are up on YouTube. And then we've also got because they're all there, ready to go, they can be part of other programs. And so it's very easy just to slip a link into a new program. Like, for instance, on the 28th of April, next week, there's a program. It's based in it's a physical space, Echo Rima, where they have performances. But right now they're doing things online, so it's an online concert series, and so our Monday night group is involved in that and presenting one of our pre-recorded pieces. It's improvised, but it's pre-recorded. It's kind of, you have to get your head around the fact that these things are not as spontaneous as you'd like them to be. I mean, ideally, we'd like the group to go to the live venue, give us fantastic performance, get some instant feedback, and go away feeling like you've made some sort of difference in the world. So this way, where you've pre-recorded something that you haven't even intended for this performance, and then you present it online as a performance, I think there are a lot of interesting contradictions that will be probably explored in the next 10 years. What it means to be spontaneous. They're collecting spontaneous, in a sense. The list of people that are performing are not organised in other than the fact that they're just there. So there's that spontaneity, but there's something. There's a lot of questions about this whole online performance thing that I find they need to be addressed.
Yeah, it's a forever changing world. It is.
Yeah. Exactly.
Today I was going to look for some rental like a rental apartment, right? And this thing was just so small. I felt like just couldn't even move in this thing. It's like what?
You're in Sydney, aren't you?
Yeah, up in Campbelltown, 250 a week, and it's just like.
How many meters? How many square meters? 25?
Roughly, don't know, but it was just small. It had no place to hang your washing out. So how do you do all your washing in that situation?
Yeah, no, it's the rental in Sydney is disgusting. It's pretty good in Vienna actually at the moment, because I think we've got a situation where the place where we are, it's old and it was going to be renovated, and it is going to be renovated, but at the moment it's not. But it's like 70 square meters, and it's very cheap right now. So we're lucky. But that's also in Vienna. I think that the rent here is much cheaper than Sydney. Much cheaper for what you get. The space-wise, you can get something just so much better. I think Sydney's one of the most expensive ones after London, I think. And it's astonishing how much of your income goes towards rental. And then trying to buy something is also a little out of the realm as well, many times.
So are you renting where you are?
Most people in Vienna rent.
How
It's
come they
actually quite
don't own the whole apartment or get a mortgage?
well. A lot of people find that it's a culture in Europe in general where a lot of people find that it's just easier and in the end, it's actually financially a better way to approach it to take out a long term lease. So if you
Mm.
take out a 10-year lease, which is possible, it's unlikely that first of all that you're going to lose your apartment even if you can't pay the rent. There's a very high rental protection here, um, and so even if you can't pay the rent, they're not allowed to actually kick you out. And right now they're not allowed to, no matter
Mm.
what, because of the pandemic.
The thing is,
So
I'm noticing around our area, like people getting evicted all the time. And
really,
yeah, like I don't know what's going on.
that's not good. No, that's then what that means is it leads to, because people get despondent from, because you know how emotional it is to move. Just the first thing that you feel is, oh no, and you get despondent, lose energy in looking for a new place,
Mm.
and you'll end up with um, homelessness. And we're all only 8 steps away from homelessness anyway.
Everyone
So
is Elizabeth. Everyone is.
yeah,
Um,
that's right.
I was
And so
speaking at.
eviction is
Mm.
only exacerbating the problem. It's just not the way to go. I mean, if somebody's ruining a place and causing danger to other people, then yes, yeah. But if they're being evicted because they're not being able to pay, um, I think that's a real problem in the system because there are always ways that you can control whether people who can pay and just choose not to. Um, you can see the difference between somebody like that and somebody who's just trying to, rot the system, and somebody who actually literally can't pay because they don't have a job. Everything's documented these days, whether you
Mm.
have a job or not, whether you pay taxes, whether you've got health insurance, whether you've got, whether you've got an internet connection. Almost everybody has a mobile connection, so or internet, whatever. So it's not impossible to see the reality of somebody's financial situation at a glimpse.
Well, at the end of the day, the landlord, well, can't kick you out straight away. I mean, it's going on. How many people out there have 3 months behind on their rent? But then that's when they evict you. But
Yeah,
I
but
don't know.
that's just leading towards homeless. It's just not the answer. I don't think. Um, and I mean, landlords, you know, whatever they want to be called, for whatever, for good or for evil, they do. Some of them do rely on this as an income as well. Um, but I still think that the right to live in a place, a safe environment, it should be basic. It should be understood. But then I'm all for basic income as well, universal basic income. I think everyone should be just given a salary when they turn 18
Mm.
or 21 or whatever, whatever age people decide. But and just let people live their lives. So
I
yeah,
always think to myself, go back to the old-fashioned way of lighting candles and having a fireplace instead of
yeah.
paying the electricity bill. I get cranky sometimes.
Well, yeah, and then you've got problems with living by yourself or with family or with friends.
Mm.
That's another thing that, and I mean, as a musician and an artist, you need your space. So you need at least your own kind of private space. Um, and it's a real problem with musicians too. We need a place that's quiet because we don't want to hear other people's noise, but we need to be able to make noise. And that is a really hard balance to do. Some solutions are people will go and live in a very remote area. Um, for instance, my sister is a cellist, professional cellist, and she lives in Cork in Ireland. And she works in Ireland and Dublin and all around the world. She does some touring when the pandemic's not around. But she lives in a very, very remote area. The
Mm.
house next door is maybe, I don't know, 300 meters away. and then the next one is like 2 kilometers away. So they are very, very remote, and it's basically a little tiny village. And the good thing is they can make as much noise as they want, and they get that deep quiet, especially when it's when you don't have the daytime birds or the thing. So recording is really fantastic sort of space to do that. The downside, of course, is its isolation, and you have to travel to get to people. Right now, it's perfect because everyone's traveling via the internet. so as long as you have a connection, you're connected to other people. That's one solution. The other solution is to find yourself a tiny space, like, for instance, the smallest rent you can, or the largest rent you can afford, which is like this big, and then create another space in it that you can use as your practice space. So, for instance, you can make practice cubicles, and where you can just go inside and you're practicing. It's not very pleasant, but at least you can do it at the times. You've got the freedom of time. You can do it in nighttime or day or whatever. You won't disturb anybody, and you can play quite loud. I'm talking about a meter square kind of cubicle with sound, with padding and everything. And so that's kind of an alternative. Or then if you're lucky enough to have family and relatives, that you can stay in a spare room.
No, it's just first ever property inspection I've done, and it looks good when it's on the website, on the real estate site, but then you go there, you think this is shit.
Yeah, they use that fisheye kind of camera too.
But your situation of renting, what's it been like for you?
In Australia, it has always been always was difficult, and at one point, we were decided, okay, we're just going to buy a place. So we bought a place in Tamworth, and that was really fantastic to have your own place. But it's being in a regional centre as opposed to a major city. Obviously, it was less expensive, but it also it kind of was equal to, or maybe less than, paying the rent. And it was a really nice feeling to have space that you can call your own, that you can do what you want with it, create a garden, create a really nice space. So that's a really good thing if you can do it, because it's psychologically really nice, especially if you have a garden or something that you can do to creatively make your space unique or personalized. But the rest of the time it's been renting, and it's just, it's nasty. You just got to deal with it. I find that it's, from what I've done in my times of renting, because I've rented a lot of different places, it's better to move if you're not happy, to go through the hideous stress of moving if you're not happy, than to remain in a place until you can't stand it at all, and then you're desperate. So even if you've only lived in a place for 6 months, it's better to move out if you're not happy. That would be my advice. Even if it's going to cost, obviously it costs money to rent, to move every time you do it, but it's better, I think, because you probably how many times have you moved in your life?
No.
Not many.
Well, I've lived with my grandparents all my life, so I don't have a renter's history, you see, so it might get a bit harder for me.
It'll be fine if you've got a some sort of income thing. But the other thing is, what does work really well is if you're linking up with other friends that are in the same situation, and together you rent something. That can be really, if so long as you trust them. But also going through universities, there are often places that sites that will say, we need. If you're going in by yourself, you've got the flexibility of being able to work, either get your own place or a space within a larger space. there are people who need somebody to rent a room, and if you go through the university, sometimes it's a group of new students that need an extra person, or it's even somebody on the faculty and they need someone. So that's definitely a way to go. I've gone through all different places, like going through hospital websites looking for people, religious websites looking for people, whatever you can find. You do whatever you can.
You know what? Who I think are the people most better off? Buddhist monks. Live their life in peace and quiet. Up in the Himalayas, in the middle of nowhere.
That's the dream, isn't it? I don't know whether they actually feel that when they're there. There are a lot of wild animals, and like, the closer you get to nature, the more you have to deal with nature. And nature is violent, and it has destructive elements in it. But yeah, I think definitely there are alternatives. I wouldn't necessarily stick to. If I were going back to Australia, I would say I wouldn't go back to Sydney. I'd find a place that's outside of Sydney. I mean, ideally, if it's by the beach, for me that would be the way to go. But there are other places like Wollongong and Newcastle where you can spread out, still be connected to Sydney, or places around Canberra or Orange, or places like that, where you can still have the connection to Sydney. It just depends on what you're doing with your life, like how much of your life is about being in Sydney, being there. I mean, why not Melbourne? What's wrong with Melbourne?
Look, I saw on a website to rent in George Street, Sydney, it's like $800 a week. It's nearly $1,000 a week for an apartment.
Yeah. I heard somewhere where prices of houses are going up $1,000 a day.
Oh God.
So I don't even know. I mean, that can't be everywhere. It can't be, But yeah, it's pretty hard. That's the thing in Australia, or certainly in New South Wales, was always, and where do you live and how much rent do you pay, and or are you paying, or are you renting or buying, or you?
Or still, when you get a mortgage, you don't own that thing, the freaking thing, till 20, 30 years of your life until you pay it off. It's the banks, and then you miss 3 months, they'll just take it. They don't care.
No, this is a risk that you take with the.
And if you work a 9 to 5, if you work a full-time job, and then what happens? Bang, tomorrow you're out. You got no work. You're screwed.
Yeah, but Stephen, don't worry about that stuff. That's old person stuff to worry. I reckon the best thing to do is, because you don't know what's going to happen in the future. You don't know what's going to happen in the next moment. It's very hard not to worry and not to be anxious, but think about how the level of anxiety and pressure you put yourself under as a musician or as a composer. Even, I mean, if you remember your first application for something, a proposal or a project or a submission for a competition, if you remember the angst of pressing submit or sending that envelope, if it was the olden times, sending an envelope, or even now.
I've done the envelope too.
Yeah. Oh. And that first time is so full of pressure. And if you can remember what that was like, and now you just press submit, you go, yep, another one, up. And then the first rejection letter is so devastating. And now you're probably going, yeah, okay, there's another one. I mean, I would say that a lot of my time I dedicate to, and I try and put it in a certain part of the week where I dedicate myself to writing proposals, submitting proposals. And now when I do quite a few of them, and I would say there was a point where I was, because of the ones I was choosing, they were very focused and very much part of what worked for me, and they were very low level budgets and things. I would say I was batting about 50% success, and I was like, yes, that's really cool. But at the moment, it's probably about 20% of things that I apply for, I'm successful. And not all of those are actually a direct financial gain. They're like a step towards another financial kind of thing. So they're creative, they're artistic, they're promotional, and they don't cost me money to do, except they cost my time and my creativity. Um, but sometimes you can just hit a really big, beautiful kind of thing. And a lot of the time though, these things are when you submit something cold, like you just found it on the internet and you think, oh, this is really interesting. I think I'm eligible. I fit the criteria. My work is possibly useful. A lot of the time, you don't know really what the feel is of the proposal or the competition, the atmosphere of it. But very often, if I've been recommended one by a friend, oh, you should apply for this. Almost, I would say, like 70 or 80% of the time, I'm successful. So if you've got people kind of looking out for you, so and that's part of what your website, your promotional stuff is about. Is the word of mouth is about telling people who know you, care about you, either personally or professionally. They're the ones that are actually going to present you with opportunities. You have to grab them. You have to make the most of the opportunity. But that's when I'm saying it. It's about who you know. The old idea of who you know gets you in the door. I suppose that's still the case, but right now in the pandemic times, it's not.
How is the pandemic where you are so far? What's going on with you?
Right now, we're still in lockdown. We're in lockdown until May the 3rd.
Oh, Jesus Christ!
Third lockdown. Yeah, all shops are closed except for necessary shops. We have to and then they're opening up in May 19th, I think. And in order to go to a restaurant, which will be open, you have to present a negative test. And everyone gets registered as they walk into the bar or the restaurant or wherever.
Well, we have the QR codes in Sydney, but they're slowly taking them away because I'm just fed up with it. As soon as you have a phone, Elisabeth, a car license, they know who you are and where you live, you know.
But here if you think the bureaucracy in Australia is bad, you should try it in Europe. It's Kafkaesque what you have to do. I mean, the number of times you have to enter your information into a registration to pre-register something that you've already registered for. It's just the way the system works here is you're constantly registering for something. But once you're in, you're in. The system is great. The vaccines are slowly rolling out. It's a little bit slow at the moment in Austria itself. It was just because of politically there were some problems that made people not order the right amount of doses and that sort of thing. But we have in the next couple of months, we think there may be an increase in the rollout. Because of my work with children, I've been given the vaccine already.
Did you get a vaccine card?
Yeah.
Do you have to show that when you're traveling?
You will. I'm not. They're trying to introduce that as a requirement, and so far, no, people haven't. I mean, you're not supposed to travel. You can't travel. It's very expensive. It's also there are places that you can't travel. If you do travel, you have to come back and quarantine for 2 weeks. There's still people traveling. And unfortunately, in Austria, the cases are still high. Like, for instance, we have 2,000 cases a week.
Oh, my God.
What's that? I mean, Australia has never even had 2,000 cases a month.
No, India and Brazil's gone to shit.
Brazil is so tragic. Apparently, they've not only run out of what they need for vaccine. They haven't got the vaccine yet, but they've run out of anesthetics. So when they have to intubate people, they can't put them under. They have to do it while they're conscious. I mean, I just they have to hold people down like in the medieval times when they were just strapping people down, and then they have to keep that person conscious or they'll die. And it's like, what world do we live in where that can't be solved?
Well, India's run out of oxygen as well. Yeah. I don't know.
No, it's a very, very difficult situation, and I think the a lot of the feeling is fatigue. We're just like we really can't afford to be relaxed about it. But we're all getting tired of doing everything. Has to be thinking, along the path of what's safe. I just did a performance on Monday night, the first live performance in over a year now, and it was a solo one called Chasing Traces, and there's a link in my on my website because the performance was recorded. But I mean, we didn't really have an audience or anything. It was allowed to be presented as a live performance, which there was then recorded and then put onto the downloadable on the internet. And but it was so nice, even though all I had was the person who was organizing the performance and his wife. Basically only had a couple of people there. It was so nice to perform in front of somebody and to do it so that it was all done in one take, and it was done without the interruption of, oh, let me just stop that, or oh, the battery's gone, or just an actual performance. And it was really very, very inspiring, and it made me think, okay, yeah, I've still got to be careful, but I really want to do another performance. Got another one coming up in I think in July, a trio performance. So by then, things may have opened up a little bit more, and we can actually do that. This is all fairly avant-garde kind of, well, it is avant-garde, experimental kind of stuff. But as far as formal rehearsing, like I have a trio that we play. It's actually a quartet that we play Italian film music, and it's a wonderful ensemble. And we rehearse in normal times. We rehearse regularly and then perform regularly. And at the moment, we haven't been able to rehearse because there's a latency problem with, obviously, as you would know, with online rehearsals. And so we're dying to get together and rehearse. And as soon as we do, we've already got people who want us to perform for them. I mean, we've got places that want to book us, and they're just like restaurants or theatres or small communities or festivals. And it's like, yes, as soon as it's all ready, you can, So it's all just waiting to happen. So they're having a little performance I did on Monday night. It was like, maybe there's something happening. It's cool. And then the other thing is we've got with a lot of people here, we have a lot of artists are getting support from the government. There are government initiatives for artists, musicians to apply for things. But then there are also a lot of musicians, especially younger ones, who are on the brink of, do I do music as a career or don't I? And they've moved. They've just decided, nah, I'll get a real estate license and sell Stephen a beautiful postcard size apartment.
Yes, and I will buy it, and I'd say I own it, and I'm going to rent it out.
Exactly. Buy two.
No, it's an important issue I bring up, Elisabeth, because I had Dave Lewis on the podcast. Any one of us can end up homeless tomorrow.
Absolutely.
Doesn't matter if you're a politician. And what I'm seeing is, people getting evicted because around the corner they just leave their stuff out the front. Jesus.
It's tragic. It's a really big problem. And I think in Australia, it's at least there is, because of the social network of free health and other benefits, it's better than it could be. Like, for instance, in America, it's there's no health insurance. Like, there's no free health insurance. There is, but it's very, very, very basic and very bad. Um, the rights, even less rights, and it's a really bad situation. The homelessness in America, it's bad enough in a sense that people don't even talk about it. It's like can't touch it. But I think Australia is heading in that direction. I think it's heading into that. Well, it's been heading into the direction of America's capitalistic, post-capitalistic kind of right wing direction for how many years? 70 since World War II. But so it's just, I see little things eroding in the Australian approach to helping people and leaving things up to private citizens, which causes problems because then you've got issues of racism and sexism and whatever, people being favoritized. Is that the word? And nepotism and Murdoch. I mean, that's a big problem right there.
Yeah. I don't know.
So it is a problem, but I think the important thing for people when they, as a general thing, is to somehow, if you can support people who need support to hold on to a space that they live in, that's really important. And if they're not happy in the space, they should be given, and somehow we have to all help people, give them the opportunity, or give them or open the space so that they can actually move to another place that makes them feel happier or safer, more content or more satisfied, or it's more convenient. I think the housing crisis in Australia is, especially the cities, is absolutely crucial to solve. Otherwise, it's going to just be a rambling and a very unpleasant place to live. So, especially with time, it gets hotter and more extreme temperatures. And
there is suburbs. I would not live in Bondi. I've never had interest living in Bondi. Sydney, I would not even live in Sydney at all.
No.
Too much noise.
But have you thought of places like Perth or Hobart or even Darwin?
Yeah.
Adelaide?
Mm-hmm.
Places like Adelaide have a great arts community in general, and so that's a plus. And Hobart, we lived in Hobart for 2 years because I was a clarinet lecturer there for a couple of years, and the head of the woodwind, brass and percussion department. And that is the most beautiful place to live. There are a lot of downsides, but it's such a beautiful place, and it's reasonably. When we were living there, it was reasonably inexpensive to live, so long as you're not living right in the city. It's a reasonably inexpensive place to live.
Well, they got a homeless problem too, as well, because they got the highest unemployed in Australia.
This is true, but some of that is also because they're this may not be the case, but there were a number of people that would say, for instance, in Tasmania, outside of Hobart, Devonport or Launceston or something, they'd say, well, my parents will pick up the pieces, so I don't really have to worry too much, because the way that the culture there is, people don't move as much. It was very much an isolated culture. When the place was colonized, the Aboriginal population was eradicated 100%. So it's a very unusual place with a lot of contradicting historical points of reference. But a lot of people there, the motivation to work is probably not as high as the motivation to work in a place like Melbourne or Sydney, where you just have to have a job. You have to have one. So I think the unemployment rate there, it's bad, but it's also exacerbated by the fact that there's an attitude amongst some of them that, like, oh well, it'll be fine. A laissez-faire attitude about being independent. So yeah, but having said that, it's a fabulous place to live geographically. It's wonderful, and if you can get work there, you can really flourish really, really well. So yeah, definitely there's that. There's also the regional centres are fantastic. Places like Orange, I mentioned before, Tamworth has a big cultural connection to Newcastle and to other smaller towns still, like Gunnedah and a couple of other, little areas around. Can't remember all their names. There are places like Maitland as well. Some of these towns have Armidale is another really good one to hang out in. The thing with these smaller places is you have to have a couple of qualities to work there in those places. One of them is discretion. You have to know when to hold your tongue. So you have to be careful. How much do you need to express yourself publicly? And how much do you put into your art and that sort of thing? It doesn't really matter what you do creatively. You can be as outrageous and forceful and avant-garde as you want, but it's how you present yourself to the local newspaper or to when you're being interviewed on the local ABC, if they still have those regional ABC radio stations. It's sort of like you have to present yourself in a dialed down kind of version if you're doing really crazy, wonderful shit. But having said that, living in Tamworth we lived there for 11 or 12 years, and because when we went there was no jazz program within the schools or within the conservatorium there. There was no avant-garde, classic, contemporary movement or anything. We created both, and to the point where we were able to develop a residency at a local bar that every Sunday night we had organised jazz to be playing, and that went on for quite a few years. We also formed a new music ensemble. We were able to have John, my husband, as a composer, but also introduce other composers. We had recordings. We were able to tour up and down in the region, not necessarily to Sydney because Sydney's saturated with contemporary music, but there were actual points where we did a little bit of a swap over between, or a group. We did an exchange with groups. All this was going on amongst the most conservative people you could possibly meet, and because there was nothing to stop us, it was fantastic. We flourished. It really was wonderful. But as soon as you want to get kind of in the public eye, then they start to look at, oh, well, that's a little bit too much for us. We even had, at one point, we were part of a movement to change they've got the annual country music festival. And we were part of the movement to change it to the Tamworth Music Festival instead of country music. And we started introducing jazz and nothing further than jazz, nothing avant-garde. But at that point, there was a possibility of, there was jazz, there was a little bit of art maybe bringing into the whole thing. And people were starting to get really excited about this because they thought, well, I don't like country music, so I have to leave every time it's on. It's nothing else that, I can't stand it. If it were a music festival, I would be involved because it would have, more variety. And that got stamped down once the movement became too alive, too exciting, too outwardly expressive. The council basically said, nope, it's only country music, and they closed down the opportunities. So this is what country towns, country regional centres are able to do, that they've got this control over what gets done. But while you're there, you can really explore your own ideas until they become, public, locally public. But internationally, it's, you can do whatever you want because, again, we've got the internet to help, and you can always fly to Zagreb or, or to Tokyo or something. It's no different from Tamworth as it is from Sydney to get anywhere. So it's perfectly legitimate place to live in those regional centres. As long as they have an airport, then yeah, you're fine,
But other than that, Anzac Day is tomorrow as well.
Yes.
Australia.
No. In Vienna, we have the most beautiful ceremony it's in the Karlsplatz, and it's in front of the Karlsplatz Kirche, which is a really beautiful church. And we have this very, very lovely ceremony. We have usually about 300 Australians are there. And so in the middle of Vienna, in the middle of the year kind of thing, you get this suddenly Australian accents. And it's just a really moving and beautiful ceremony. They just do it really nicely, and it's wonderful to connect to these people. I've never really been into connecting with ceremony or something, but the way they do it is just wonderful. And then we all go back to which is just around the corner, we go back to the Australian Embassy and have a fabulous Australian breakfast complete with Bundaberg rum. And this is all happening at like 7 a.m. before work.
Oh, jeez. Like the dawn service in Western Australia is cancelled this year.
Yeah. Yes, it's the same here. It's all cancelled. Yeah.
I mean, in Sydney, I think it's going ahead, but
probably restricted, but I would imagine it's still going to go ahead.
The last dawn service I went to was just miserable.
Was that? Well, that would have been during lockdown.
Nah, this was like 4 years ago. Roughly 4 years ago. It's just, yeah. Just sad.
Do you have connections? Does anybody in your family has been in the military or was in the military, like grandparents or something like that?
Yeah, granddad did, but in Hungary, not Australia. But just going to that dawn service, just miserable. It's just depressing. I can't do it.
Well, I think there are ways to present services to commemorate, and there are ways to not do it. And I think the important thing, I know what they try to do here is to connect the fact that we are still alive because there were some things that happened historically. So there's connection that way. The other thing is to look at it from the point of view of we're not just commemorating these dead people in this tragic incident. We're actually reminding ourselves that we have to do this ceremony and we have to commemorate, and we have to keep remembering so that we don't keep going on with these this war and this decision to make turmoil in the world, so that we don't have to keep doing these services. And so I think it's really important that the idea of a commemoration is to remember the history, so that you don't forget when one, or somebody in power goes to make a decision: do we go to war or not? So if anything, there's that. Other than that, yes, it's a pretty. I mean, basically, you are in a service like that. You're on the other end of the scale. You're sanitizing and making something sort of abstract with what was pain, misery, death, illness, rape, pillage, murder, power mongering, greed, jealousy, all the attributes that humans have that are negative. That's what happens in war. And we're kind of saying, and let's remember everyone in a kind of this sort of abstract way. It doesn't show, it doesn't reveal what it actually is that we're commemorating. Look, so you might be finding depression in that.
There's a book you need to read called The Fortunate Life by A.B. Facey, or listen to it. Have you come across that?
No, I haven't. Is this an Australian?
Oh yes.
Story? Yeah.
Yeah, it's on Audible, but living through the Great Depression, going to World War One, coming back, not having a job. A lot of veterans came back.
What was it called again?
Fortunate Life. It's Australian. I've got to listen to it again because it's wow.
Yeah, okay. I'll have a listen. It's having being in Vienna. We are also you get face to face with the war still, like the World War II. There's still elements of it. For instance, we have things here on the street which are little plaques, commemorative plaques for all the Jews that were killed in the Holocaust. And you can be walking along the street, and there it is. There's a plaque, and you look down and you read, and it's like this plaque commemorates a particular person and where they ended up, like in Auschwitz or Dachau or wherever they ended up in dying. But sometimes you can look down at a plaque, and it says, in this house, in front of where you're standing, there were 200 people were here. And then they were then transported to the concentration camp. So you can be looking down, and you suddenly see 200 people are dead, and it's just it hits you, always just in the middle of the street or in the middle of the, when you're walking down. There's so much commemorative experience here. You can also ignore it. And that's why they're on the floor. People can walk past them. And we've seen things like you see somebody has ashed on one of them or something, because we have, unfortunately, right now, there's a very much a neo-Nazi kind of movement that's it's getting purchase. And the government's trying everything it can to, it's like playing that, what's that game where you
political football.
Yeah. And there's just a lot of tension in the air, but here, almost everywhere you can see some remnant of World War II, and in almost any European city you can see that. So I think it's really, and that's just World War II. I mean, that's not even the immigration caused, the immigration from recent conflict in the Middle East, or from other places of the world. It's a big melting, in a way, melting pot or mixed salad of things that are happening in Europe and people migrating here. So yeah, it's everywhere. But I think Australia has Well, the first thing I think is Australia needs to, here we go, put more emphasis on the creative mind and less on the capital and financial mind. And I think that if it were to be a more of a creative nation, and emphasize what it means to think up ideas, follow through with plans that are thought of from a creative perspective and not from a financial perspective, then more people would benefit. That's just my take on it. I was just recently looking at a documentary on Ljubljana in Slovenia, and their idea is recycle in-house. Everyone has an education, and everyone can go to university for free. Everyone has free medical, and everyone has a right, basically, to be creative. They have 3 professional orchestras, and they're very proud of their orchestra, the Ljubljanans, and the population is around 250,000. I mean, how is that possible?
I don't know.
These people can support the arts the way they do, and support the architecture, which is, a lot of it has to be maintained because it's old, support the artists there. How is it possible? It's possible because they've put an emphasis on creativity and creative thought, and having creative thought having value, as opposed to money and services, the service industry. So yeah, so it's possible. I'm not saying Ljubljana is a utopian environment by any stretch of the imagination. A lot of people who can't wait to get out for many reasons, but I think that it's a direction that I think is very, very useful and fruitful to think creatively. So what can we do about it? I think what we can do is, every time we have an opportunity, we have a fork in the road, we have a decision to make, we can at least, if nothing else, we can first consider all the creative aspects of that decision. So for instance, moving house, the first part of the consideration is this space going to be satisfactory for me to be creative? Are the people around going to support the creativity, in the sense that they're not going to knock on the door all the time and say, shut up, stop playing your clarinet, enough of the high notes. And then we'll look at the other considerations, but start with the creative ones. And even if the creative ones have to be pushed aside in the end because you've got convenience issues, you have to have your space in a certain way, and you can only afford a certain thing. At least having considered them keeps for you your self-worth at a level that's meaningful to you. And so I think that's the thing that the artists and musicians, poets, writers, we have to keep knowing in ourselves the value of ourselves, and rather than the value of what people think we are. As John says, money just gives you the indication of what you, what does he say? I have to get it right, but the money indicates how valueless you are. So that's why we say priceless artwork.
Well, my plaque is priceless.
Exactly. You might be able to NFT it, or you might be able to auction it off for a charity or in the future or something. But right now, it is worth more than anything in the world, But yeah, the concept of what we do and our worth is limited when we have to get paid for it. On the other end, and I think it's perfectly fine to live with these two contradictions, as Dorothy Parker says. Money, art that's paid for, indicates that it's other than something that's just frivolous. So we actually are taken seriously. If somebody is paid a serious amount of money to do something creative, we go, well, that must be really substantial. Whether I like it or not, it's considered something substantial. So yes, so it's money is the value of our worthlessness. I think that's how John says it. If he hasn't said it like that, I'll get you the link. Anyway, Stephen, I have to go now.
Yeah, thanks for coming on today, Elisabeth.
It's been an absolute pleasure. And I've got new things on my website as well. So if anyone wants to catch anything that's on my website, events and new articles and new collections of works.
Awesome.
To see that.